like Alex Eala, Joao Fonseca, seeing the Filipino fans, the Brazilian fans
doing really, really well here as well. So it's like you see the next generation, the young generation hyping up the tennis world.
Part is she's coming here in a very different position than she came last year. That's class, so much grace, and she's fun to watch. I think there are a couple of things she needs to continue to improve.
Something has been happening behind closed doors at the WTA, something that hasn't been officially acknowledged, yet the tennis world is starting to feel its impact. And honestly, it's the kind of situation that should raise serious eyebrows. Just days ago, Alex Eala fell from world number 29 to number 45 after a heavy round of 16 defeat at the 2026 Miami Open, losing 6-0, 6-2 to Karolina Muchova in under an hour. A one-sided match, no doubt. But here's where things start to get uncomfortable. Despite that performance, and a ranking that shouldn't have guaranteed entry, Eala has continued to receive wild card after wild card at major tournaments. From the Qatar Open earlier this season to Abu Dhabi in February, the pattern is hard to ignore. Now, insiders within the sport are pointing to something the WTA hasn't addressed publicly: growing pressure from sponsors. When Eala isn't in the draw, engagement appears to drop, and significantly. Viewership numbers from events she skipped tell a stark story, showing noticeable declines compared to tournaments where she played. It paints a picture that goes beyond rankings and results, one where commercial interests may be quietly influencing decisions behind the scenes.
She's such a fighter, which you just absolutely fall in love with as an athlete.
Record low viewership in key broadcast windows, sparking tense discussions at the executive level.
I'm not really sure how far the gap is.
If you've followed tennis long enough to understand how these decisions are really made, subscribe, because what we're about to break down could change how you see this entire situation. Let's start with what these conversations actually look like inside boardrooms, because that context is what makes the wild card situation around Eala so revealing. Tournament directors at WTA events operate within a system that gives them a limited number of wild cards to hand out each week. Those spots are intended to serve specific purposes, like rewarding promising young talent.
And we have 1 billion fans engaging in our content worldwide.
Accommodating returning former champions, and boosting commercial appeal when a player's ranking temporarily slips below the cutoff. That last category is where things start to get interesting, because it's the one that has driven nearly every decision in 2026. Take the Abu Dhabi Open in February. Eala and her compatriot Janice Tien were originally set to play in qualifying. But before the tournament began, both were handed wild cards that placed them directly into the main draw, a field featuring top names like Elena Rybakina, Victoria Mboko, and Zhang Qinwen. The official explanation was simple: exposure and development opportunities. What the press release didn't mention was the visible surge in attendance whenever Eala stepped on court. Crowds at the Aviation Club Tennis Center filled up in a way the event hadn't seen before. She rode that momentum to the quarterfinals before falling to Ekaterina Alexandrova, walking away with $35,000 in prize money and 108 ranking points, enough to push her to a then-career high of world number 38 and secure direct entry into the Qatar Open. That direct entry into Doha is the detail most people overlooked. For the first time in her career, Eala entered a WTA 1000 event purely on ranking. No wild card needed. But she lost in the first round to teenage Czech star Tereza Valentova, 7-6, 6-1. The early exit sent her back down the live rankings, erasing much of the progress she had just made. And that sequence matters. Without the Abu Dhabi wild card accelerating her rise, she wouldn't have qualified for Qatar in the first place. The wild card didn't just give her matches, it effectively built the ranking that opened the next door. This is where the conversation shifts from competitive fairness into something far more commercially driven.
To take a football stadium and turn it into all of this, and I'm delighted to be here and can't wait to see the tennis this week.
The 2026 BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells, often called the fifth Grand Slam of women's tennis by ESPN, set new records across the board. Total attendance reached 527,626 fans over 2 weeks, with the middle weekend alone drawing a record 176,264 spectators. On the broadcast side, it became the most watched event in Tennis Channel history, with viewership up 39% compared to 2025. Digital engagement also surged, hitting 225 million social views throughout the fortnight and generating 10.1 million interactions, a 39% year-over-year increase. Eala was part of the draw, and her presence was impossible to ignore. She defeated Diana Yastremska and Coco Gauff before falling to Linda Noskova in the round of 16. Along the way, she drew thousands of Filipino fans, many lining up at Stadium 3 more than 36 hours before her matches. Even her practice sessions became major attractions, with hundreds gathering courtside on a Tuesday morning in the Palm Springs heat. At the same time, nearby practice courts featuring Carlos Alcaraz and Taylor Fritz, both significantly bigger names on the ATP Tour, saw relatively minimal crowds. The tournament's official YouTube channel even released a Day in the Life video centered on Eala, which became the most watched piece of content from the entire 2026 event, and by a wide margin. Tommy Haas, Indian Wells tournament director and former world number 2, openly acknowledged what many were already calling the Eala effect.